She's the queen of Korea's #1 all-girls high school. She's beautiful, kind, and comes from a super wealthy family. Her yearly donations to the school are enough to buy the whole place. All the other students wanted to be friends with her. Some people even spent money to buy the seat next to her. But among all the rich girls, she picked the poorest student in the school to be her desk partner. Everyone was curious. They wondered what kind of magic this girl, who wore a simple uniform from a rural school, had. The girl's name was Solji. She had never felt like she really existed since she was a little kid. When she was 5, she went to a school event, but because she didn't have a uniform, they forgot about her at the beach. She got lost and ended up in an orphanage. Even at the orphanage, she didn't feel like she mattered. Her friends didn't tell her to come eat, and the kitchen staff never remembered to save her any food. She just scraped by, sometimes hungry, sometimes full, until she was 18. Even though she was grown up, she couldn't find a normal job because she was an orphan. Luckily, a nice senior introduced her to a part-time job. Turns out, this job involved using a fake ID to buy prescription medicine. And this experience changed Solji's life. After finishing one job, the senior suddenly asked Solji about her dreams. Solji looked confused and said she'd never even thought about it. The senior smirked, then took out some medicine and gave it to Solji, saying it was something rich people in Gangnam were fighting over to buy. Finally, he told Solji in a meaningful voice, "If you don't want to live like me, you better study hard from now on." For some reason, the words from this not-so-upstanding senior really convinced Solji. So, Solji started studying hard, and her grades went from the bottom of the class all the way up to 15th place. Along with her improved grades, Solji noticed that the lady in the kitchen started saving food for her, and even brought her late-night snacks when she stayed up late studying. This treatment made Solji secretly think, if I get first place in the whole school, will I get even better treatment? To double her study efforts, she took the medicine the senior had given her and swallowed it all down. These pills were actually good stuff. After taking them, her ability to focus skyrocketed, and her mind had never been so clear. In this state, she got first place in the second exam. At this point, the bullies at school didn't dare to mess with her anymore. Seeing the benefits of getting first place, Solji worked even harder to maintain her ranking. At the same time, she became more and more dependent on the effects of the medicine, to the point where she used her part-time job to hide a lot of it. Not long after, the orphanage found Solji's biological father. She quit her part-time job and went to Seoul to reunite with her dad. 4 months later, Solji transferred from her hometown to Korea's #1 all-girls high school. On her first day of school, she wore her old red uniform and dragged her suitcase to school. As soon as she entered the school, she realized that the atmosphere here was completely different from her old school. The homeroom teacher just glanced at her and told her to find her own classroom. Solji, with her suitcase, was asking for directions in a school where everyone carried Chanel bags. No one even paid attention to this transfer student from the countryside. Solji accidentally wandered into the auditorium where the opening ceremony was taking place. The hall was chaotic, and there was even an old woman selling flowers. As everyone was trying to shoo the flower lady away, a girl suddenly stood up and said she wanted to buy all the flowers. Solji stood quietly beside her, watching the girl buy the flowers. Then, the girl went up to the stage, and the noisy hall suddenly went silent. The girl introduced herself as J.I., and then began to lead the opening ceremony in English. The audience below, including the teachers, listened quietly. Seeing this, Solji immediately understood that J.I. was definitely at the top of the pyramid at this high school. What Solji didn't expect was that J.I. was in the same class as her. The homeroom teacher greeted her warmly and told her she could choose her desk partner. The students below immediately perked up, hoping the goddess would choose them. J.I., like a queen, walked around the classroom twice, carefully observing every eager gaze. Finally, to everyone's surprise, J.I. sat down next to this ordinary, lost transfer student. Im-ji, I've heard about you. After school, a few people blocked Solji, offering to buy her seat. Solji wasn't swayed at all. She was only concerned about which seat was closest to the stage. Finally, she agreed to swap seats with a girl in the middle of the class. After the two of them swapped seats, Ji suddenly came over and asked her desk partner to go get something to eat. The other girl looked at Ji excitedly, thinking she had become Ji's new desk partner. But Ji took Solji's hand and said those words to her. On her very first day at the elite school, this country girl had gotten the Mary Sue treatment. The school queen not only chose her as a desk partner, but also invited her to join her queen bee friend group. Ji's two best friends looked confused. They didn't understand why Ji would let a poor transfer student join their group. Actually, Solji had the same question, but as the conversation went on, she quickly understood Ji's intentions. She wanted to find out about Solji's college aspirations and her academic performance. Ji said her dream was to go to medical school at Seoul National University because she wanted to carry on her father's wishes. Then, she asked Solji if she planned to apply to Seoul National University because she saw a Seoul National University keychain on Solji's bag. Actually, Solji didn't want to tell them her dream. She was afraid they'd laugh at her for being too ambitious. Then, the two best friends asked Solji where she went for extra classes. Solji stammered and said she had never taken extra classes. The two best friends were immediately stunned because everyone at the school took extra classes. Even a top student like Ji had signed up for 3 extra classes in math alone. Now it was Solji's turn to be shocked. She realized these students were just like her, all using a mysterious medicine to boost their brains. Solji immediately became incredibly worried. She felt like the mysterious medicine she had been using wasn't working anymore. How could she compete with these rich girls who took extra classes with famous teachers and used this mysterious medicine? After lunch, Solji went back to class to pack up her things, preparing to swap seats with the other girl. At this moment, another girl nearby told her not to change seats without Ji's permission and warned her that people chosen by Ji wouldn't have a peaceful day. But Solji didn't believe this warning. She quickly swapped seats with the girl. Ji came back and saw this and asked her why she was sitting there. She said she was nearsighted and had swapped seats with a classmate to be closer to the stage. Oh, really? Ji went back to her old seat. Solji even purposely watched, but didn't see any sign of displeasure from Ji. She thought the seat change had just passed. The long and eventful first day of school finally ended. That afternoon, after going home, Solji quickly opened a website to buy used items and looked for a uniform. After agreeing with the seller, Solji went to the agreed-upon location to make the transaction. Having received the uniform, Solji hurried home, intending to wash the clothes immediately. The uniform was covered in some kind of unknown liquid, and there was a used condom left in the pocket. Solji was disgusted and quickly threw the clothes into the washing machine. The next day, Solji wore the clean uniform to school. However, for some reason, she felt like the other students in the class were looking at her strangely. Ji's new desk partner even deliberately spilled ketchup on her shirt. The mocking words around her made Solji remember her days of being bullied. At the same time, she understood the other girl's warning. People chosen by Ji really wouldn't have a peaceful day. A feeling of suffocation came over her, and she ran to the restroom to wash her dirty shirt. Ji came running over to comfort her, and even offered her own shirt to change into. Solji was afraid that interacting with Ji would make her a target for bullying, so she firmly refused and pushed Ji away. Ji didn't force it either, threw her shirt in the trash and left. After washing her clothes and returning to the classroom, the homeroom teacher suddenly brought in a math test, requiring them to take a 20-minute test right there in class. Solji realized that she hadn't learned any of the content on the test, and she could only answer 4 questions. Yet, Ji and some of the other students easily got perfect scores. After school, she hurried to ask the teacher for the answers to the test, but the teacher said that the test was used to survey the extra classes outside of school. Therefore, the answers were only explained in those extra classes. Solji was completely stunned. That meant that if she didn't take extra classes, she would fall behind. Because of the extra classes, Solji was restless and worried. During lunch, she discovered the students were holding their phones and talking about her. Solji couldn't take it anymore, threw her lunch tray down, and then snatched a phone from someone to look. Turns out, someone had posted about her buying the used uniform online. People claiming to be former students of the school were cursing at her without holding back in the comment section. Solji was completely helpless. She couldn't figure out who was secretly following her and taking pictures. She could only pretend like nothing had happened. After school, she went to the extra classes near the school to find out about the tuition fees. The result was that the fees were so expensive that they almost made her faint. She could only take the flyers and leave. However, as she passed by a classroom, she saw the teacher explaining the answers to the day's test. She took out her phone and planned to record a video, but she was caught red-handed by the admissions teacher. The teacher treated her like a freeloader and chased after her relentlessly. Fortunately, J.I., who was at her extra class, saw her. J.I. gave Solji her hat and told her to hide on the rooftop so the teacher wouldn't catch her. Solji quickly ran up to the rooftop to hide. A moment later, it started to rain, and the sound of a door opening and footsteps echoed not far away. Solji was afraid it was the teacher, so she quickly bowed her head and covered her ears. But the person who came wasn't the teacher. Solji looked at the beautiful girl in front of her. Was she an angel or a devil? It could be said that J.I. was born busy with competing. From the time her mother was pregnant, her father had summoned famous fortune tellers and psychologists from all over the country, choosing an auspicious day to have a cesarean section. Therefore, from birth, she had a good astrological chart, good health, beauty, and talent. Excelling in dance, music, painting, sports, whatever she studied, she progressed very quickly. Everyone praised her as a genius, except for one person, her father. From beginning to end, her father only said one sentence. What place did J.I. get? J.I. has an older sister, 1 year older than her. When J.I. was in kindergarten, she could easily solve a Rubik's Cube. Her father told J.I. that this world was a place where the big fish swallowed the small fish. Compassion and yielding would only cause one to fall behind. Therefore, she had to become the object of everyone's envy. Even her sister was no exception. From then on, the two sisters became competitors. J.I. tried every way to keep her distance from her sister. It must be said that she treated everyone this way, as if everyone was her opponent. By chance, J.I. met her first love, but unfortunately, that person couldn't enter her heart either. She was like wearing a suit of armor, and no matter what method she used, she couldn't take it off. J.I. often went to church to pray, which was the most boring time of her week. Usually, she prayed to repent to God, but she had nothing to repent for. Therefore, she came up with a way to do bad things, such as racing, drinking late at night, and pretending to be a bad girl in a bar. But the more bad things she did, the more she looked forward to the day of the service, and even found the church very interesting. One day, J.I. dreamed that she was wearing armor and jumping into the Han River. Because the armor was too heavy, no matter how brave she was, she couldn't do anything. Unexpectedly, at the bottom of the deep sea, she felt unusually peaceful and beautiful, and even breathed more easily than usual. Returning to reality, J.I. pulled Solji and ran straight to her home hospital. Solji looked at her in a daze and followed behind her. J.I. led her to the elevator and down to the basement. The luxurious furniture and amenities here made Solji couldn't help but look around. Meanwhile, J.I. was leisurely sitting on a chair for the nurse to check. Solji looked at J.I., a little confused, until she saw the nurse give J.I. a few pills and wished her good luck with the extra class tonight. Solji realized that J.I. was preparing for the extra class. Solji couldn't help but feel poverty really did limit her imagination. Next, J.I. led her to the extra class room. While Solji was observing the room, J.I. opened the cabinet and took out a new uniform that had been prepared and gave it to Solji. Solji looked at the new uniform and asked curiously. J.I. told Solji to try on the clothes first and then asked. Then, she went forward and took off the old uniform on Solji. Solji couldn't refuse anymore. When J.I. took off her shirt, she saw a circular scar on Solji's collarbone. Solji quickly used her collar to cover it. It was a wound from being bullied back home. J.I. didn't ask many questions, as if she had guessed it. The new clothes fit Solji better than she expected. After getting dressed, Solji asked about the question in her heart. Why are you so nice to me? Because I admire you, and you haven't taken any extra classes but still get first place in the whole school. I want to know about your study method. Can you share your study method? Solji didn't expect it was for this reason. She explained that she could only get first place back home, Now that she was in Seoul, she had never taken extra classes, so she didn't even understand the test questions. Ji smiled, then took out a set of test papers from the extra class and gave them to Solji. She wanted to make a deal with Solji. Later, she would give all the test papers from the extra class to Solji, and Solji had to tell her about her study methods in detail. While Solji was considering whether to agree to this beneficial deal, the voices of Ji's two best friends suddenly echoed from outside. Ji quickly put away the clothes and pulled Solji to hide in the closet. The two friends entered the room and started bad-mouthing Solji. They said Solji was Ji's new pet. The long-haired girl also said Solji was a freak. Hearing this, Ji quickly covered Solji's ears. The long-haired girl said she saw in Solji's records that her father was dead, and her mother was still alive but much younger than her father. She guessed Solji might be an illegitimate child of unknown origin. Hearing these malicious speculations, Ji smiled at Solji so she wouldn't know they were talking bad about her. At this moment, Solji's phone suddenly rang. The two best friends walked over, about to open the closet door. Ji quickly sent a text message, cleverly getting rid of them. Then, Ji took Solji out of the hospital using the private elevator. Solji gave Ji the Seoul National University keychain that she treasured to express her gratitude. And this keychain was left by her father. She found a phone in her father's belongings, and there was a Seoul National University keychain attached to it. However, because she didn't know the password, she still couldn't unlock the phone. At this moment, Solji didn't leave the hospital immediately, but went to the hospital's funeral home. She remembered 4 months ago, she finally found her father who had been missing for 13 years. But before she could call him Dad, a strange accident had separated father and daughter. Solji and her stepmother handled the funeral arrangements together. Her father's funeral home was set up in this hospital. On the day of the funeral, her father's attending doctor also came to the funeral home to pay his respects. Solji really wanted to ask the man about some things about her father, but she saw the man and his daughter hugging intimately. After transferring to the new school, Solji learned that the man's daughter was Ji. Ji was not only from a wealthy family, but also the queen of the school. Solji was very jealous of everything Ji possessed. Now Ji took the initiative to throw her an olive branch, and Solji thought that maybe she could take this opportunity to change her fate. She took the extra class test papers that Ji gave her and started studying by herself. However, after looking at them for a long time, she still didn't know where to start. In the end, she could only rely on a few mysterious pills to get her brain working. The medicine indeed worked immediately. She immediately figured out a solution and began to immerse herself in studying. Elsewhere, Ji and her two best friends had finished their extra class. Ji's father personally drove the three of them home. On the way, the two best friends kept wanting to buy things, so they got out of the car first. They didn't like being around Ji's father, always feeling. He made people uncomfortable. After the two friends got out of the car, Ji's father suddenly asked about Solji's situation. He had heard Solji was very smart, so he was worried that Solji would surpass Ji. Ji, you must get first place. Solji is not worth worrying about. She's not my opponent. With this sentence from Ji, her father finally fell silent, satisfied. The next day, as soon as she arrived in class, Solji found out that Ji's desk partner, for some reason, wasn't coming to school. After school, Solji packed her bag and went back to sit next to Ji. This seat is mine, right? Ji naturally agreed. Solji returned to Ji's side. The most uneasy person was Ji's short-haired friend because Ji had promised to recommend her to be class president. But now Ji was so close to Solji, she worried that Ji might recommend Solji to be class president. Her worry quickly became reality. During the class meeting that day, Ji indeed recommended Solji to be class president. Her words were as good as determining that Solji would take power. However, to show fairness, the homeroom teacher still let everyone vote just for appearances. The result was obvious. Solji received the highest number of votes and became class president, while the short-haired friend was a few votes short and came in second. She was not convinced and rushed onto the stage to check the ballots, discovering that a few ballots had handwriting that looked exactly the same, suspecting that someone had secretly forged the ballots for Solji. Solji told her to just name the person, but the short-haired friend immediately shut up. No matter how uncomfortable she didn't dare to expose the queen's tricks in front of everyone. In the end, she could only reluctantly become the vice president. But JII still wouldn't let her go. She told the short-haired friend that she had to apologize to the class president and the whole class. The short-haired friend, who was already dissatisfied, could only grit her teeth and apologize to Solji and the whole class. From then on, Solji officially became the class president. After school, Solji found a green letter in her mailbox. She was about to go home when she saw a pair of men's leather shoes in front of the door. Solji quietly put the letter down and left. She went to the park to continue trying the passwords of the phone. In the evening, as soon as Solji got home, JII texted her and told her to invite guests to celebrate her becoming class president. Solji didn't refuse. She arranged to meet JII at a karaoke bar. As for the short-haired friend, she took the ballots home to examine them carefully. At this time, her mother had just returned to the office, ready to start work, when she found out that her daughter had only become the vice president. In front of the mother who had been class president for 12 school years, she felt even more ashamed. Suddenly, she noticed the documents her mother brought back. There was a document related to the case of Solji's father. JI's father was also in trouble. The family of a patient refused to sign the settlement agreement, and it was very likely they would file a lawsuit. Mr. Kong Kong said that the patient was unconscious when they arrived at the hospital. Despite resuscitation, they didn't survive. Furthermore, he wasn't worried. After all, the patient's family only had a mother and child, and life would certainly be difficult. Just giving them more settlement money would solve the matter. At this time, Solji waited and waited at the agreed location, but didn't see JI arrive. She didn't know that JI was at a restaurant on the second floor, watching Solji in the rain with interest, as if she was taking a test of obedience. Half an hour later, Solji entered the karaoke room alone. After singing a few songs, JI suddenly barged in. Actually, Solji was used to the feeling of being abandoned and isolated. Even if JII didn't come, she wouldn't feel disappointed. But it was precisely because JII came that this feeling became even more special. To put it a little too strongly, perhaps Solji realized that someone could pull her out of the dark abyss. On the way home, Solji finally mustered the courage to say the words in her heart, that she was always easily forgotten by others. So she often didn't wait, fearing that she would only receive emptiness in the end. JII solemnly promised, "I can't be sure about others, but if it's you, I will definitely come." Solji's heart was a little sour, but also sweet. Then, JII invited Solji to her house to spend the night. Solji was still hesitating when JII took her hand and pulled her home. JII's house was so large that the end couldn't be seen. As soon as they went upstairs, they met JI's dog. Solji realized that JI also had a sister. Then, JII led Solji to her room. Her room was like a vast ocean, quiet and dreamy. Solji dreamed of having such a dream room. At this moment, JI's dog brought in a princess dress. Seeing the princess dress, Solji suddenly remembered the past and emotionally told JII about getting lost when she was little. JI's comforting words then made Solji unload all the burdens in her heart. Solji's confession of her pain brought her closer to JII. The two were no longer strangers like before. JII took off her clothes in front of Solji, wanting to bathe and sleep with her. Solji turned her face away, wanting to look but not daring to look too much. Scented candles, expensive bath milk, a dreamy large bathtub. The most luxurious things of the upper class. Solji had grown up in this school, and this was the first time she had bathed with someone else. She was embarrassed and didn't know where to look. "Is this your first time?" Solji was asked like that, and she stammered. "Why is your face so red?" JII slowly moved closer. The eyes of the two met, and the emotions were indescribable. She didn't know when, but the hand gently placed on Solji's lips, a fleeting kiss like a dragonfly skimming the water. After that, everything went out of control. Elsewhere, the short-haired friend was still resentful about the class president situation. She was secretly looking at the lawsuit documents that her mother had brought back late at night. The case in the lawsuit was a medical malpractice case, and the defendant was JI's father. The short-haired friend's eyes immediately lit up, feeling this could become JI's weakness. At the same time, the long-haired friend told her that she had heard that JI's old desk partner had to move for some reason. The long-haired friend felt this must be related to Ji. At this time, Solji couldn't sleep, awakened by memories. It was a little early for the month, and Solji's stomach hurt a little. She went to the bathroom and used Ji's sanitary pad. Turning to look at the bathtub, Solji was a little dazed, and after a long while, returned to the bedroom. She accidentally heard a message coming from Ji's phone. She peeked, discovering it was a message from her old desk partner. The old desk partner said she would apologize to Solji and would also transfer schools immediately, begging Ji to delete the video. Seeing this message, Solji began to worry. She was afraid that Ji had also taken some kind of video of her, so she secretly picked up Ji's phone to take a peek. Halfway through, her pupils contracted. What shocking secret had Solji seen after all? This was the first time the genius rich girl Ji ever got second place. Her 800-word essay only got 90 points, while the top score went to her deskmate, Solji, a new student who had just moved from the countryside. The moment the teacher announced the scores, the group of wealthy girls below were also shocked. Their mouths dropped open. Right after that, they demanded the teacher read Solji's essay out loud to everyone. But the teacher immediately refused because the essay's content was about Solji's personal life, and it wasn't appropriate to share it publicly. Ji's close friend Choyun stirred everyone up to pressure Solji into making the essay public. Solji didn't respond and just put the essay in her bag. However, after class, Ji couldn't hold back and asked Solji what she had actually written. Solji casually said, "Nothing special," and then changed the subject. Actually, in the essay, Solji had written about her tragic family background. Ji had known about this before Solji transferred to school. It turned out that the night before, when Solji stayed over at Ji's house, she accidentally discovered that Ji's phone had a lot of detailed information about her and her parents, including her father's resume, all of her exam scores, and even a missing person flyer from when Solji was lost as a child. In other words, Ji had all the information about Solji and her family in her hands. This shocked Solji terribly. She didn't understand why Ji had this information and what her purpose was. Solji continued scrolling to the photo album and saw a video of Ji threatening her previous deskmate. In the video, Ji said she would expose the girl's drug use, which made the girl terrified and beg, not knowing what she had done to anger Ji. Ji said that as long as the girl transferred schools, she would delete the video. After watching the video, Solji felt extremely uneasy. She transferred these photos and videos to her own phone and then quietly left Ji's house in the middle of the night. As for her friend Choyun, she was searching for the case related to Solji's father. That day, he was taken to hospital because of a stomachache, and he ultimately died from acute septicemia. But online, there were quite a few medical staff saying that there were mistakes that led to the patient's death, and that medical staff member was also convicted. Thinking about this, her mood improved significantly. The next morning, when Ji woke up and didn't see Solji, she wasn't worried at all, because last night she had secretly installed a tracker on Solji's phone. Now, no matter where Solji was, she knew exactly. However, when she got to school, Ji saw that Solji seemed to be upset. She rushed over and asked Solji why she had left without saying anything. Solji made the excuse that her mother had suddenly called her come home. The two of them went to the office and happened to see Ji's former deskmate, who was processing her transfer. Solji suddenly wanted to test Ji's attitude toward that girl, so she suggested they go say goodbye. Unexpectedly, Ji acted like nothing had happened, went up and politely said goodbye to the girl and her mother. After lunch, when they returned to class, Solji discovered that her essay was missing. Ji immediately told everyone to help look for it. Everyone found copies of the essay placed in their desks and started reading them out of curiosity. When Ji saw this, she rushed over to collect them one by one. She wouldn't allow anyone to read it if the owner of the essay didn't agree. After reading the essay's content, Ji thought that someone must have deliberately distributed it. She angrily said that she would definitely help Solji find this person. Solji, however, was very calm and asked Ji why she was so angry. Before Ji could explain, Solji directly exposed her. Solji took out the file she had saved last night and placed them in front of Ji. Ji scrolled to the saved video and then realized that Solji had deliberately tested her in the office earlier. But she wasn't remorseful at all, and even thought that she had helped Solji get rid of a bully. Solji said that what she wanted to know most now was why Ji had her father's belongings and documents. Whether her father's death was related to Ji or or not, but Ji didn't explain, seeing Ji being so smug. Solji said outright that she had put the copies of her essay in everyone's desks, deliberately letting everyone know about her pitiful situation. This action by Solji was beyond Ji's expectations, and that was exactly her purpose, to prove that Ji didn't understand her at all. After Solji's essay spread through the class, everyone was talking about her circumstances. Her friend Choi Yun, who didn't like Solji, took this opportunity to take her out of the classroom. Solji directly asked her what she wanted. Choi Yun said that she knew Solji's father was the school's test creator, and she also knew that he died at Ji's family's hospital. But that wasn't the most important thing. She also knew that Solji's stepmother was suing Ji's father for medical malpractice that led to Solji's father's death. Solji was stunned when she heard this because she had absolutely no idea that her stepmother was suing Ji's father. Choi Yun said that her mother was the lawyer in charge of this case, so she knew so much. She continued to tell Solji that Ji's father wanted to quickly settle with her stepmother, but Solji's stepmother didn't agree. Choi Yun speculated that Ji's father wanted to break the deadlock, so he arranged for his daughter to deliberately approach Solji with the aim of offering a settlement at the right time. Solji recalled every detail from the beginning of her acquaintance with Ji until now, and she felt that Ji had indeed approached her with a purpose. But Solji didn't understand why Choi Yun was telling her all of this. What was her real purpose? Choi Yun admitted that it was probably because of her inferiority complex towards Ji, because from elementary school until now, she had never been able to surpass Ji. Recalling elementary school, there was a hateful girl named Han Ji. She was very good at studying, but her weakness was her sharp tongue. She often mocked Choi Yun, saying that doing a lot of exercises didn't necessarily mean getting high scores, or criticizing her drawings, advising her to take extra lessons. Choi Yun was so angry that she grabbed Han Ji's hair and they fought. Later, even though Han Ji's family's business failed and they had to go to England to study, she was still arrogant until the very end. After the hateful top student in the class left, Choi Yun thought she could take her place, but the transfer student who arrived was even more outstanding than Han Ji. Ji was both smart and beautiful, and she was also very popular. She was the student council president, and Choi Yun was only the vice president. On the surface, the two were a perfect pair, until that day, when the boy who sat next to them asked Choi Yun to go eat spicy rice cakes after school on the condition that she bring Ji along. The boy's eyes never left Ji, even after the date, when Choi Yun was about to confess her feelings. He even asked Choi Yun for Ji's contact information. Class vice president, student council vice president, club vice president, vice everything. It felt like, as long as Ji was there, Choi Yun could never escape the vice title. Second to one, above many. Wasn't that just being second place forever? Inside, she secretly competed with Ji, and their friendship gradually changed. Right at this moment, Choi Yun suddenly got period cramps. She asked Solji for painkillers, but Solji said she never took painkillers because she didn't have money to buy them, and then held Choi Yun's hand and massaged it for her. Feeling the warmth from Solji, the two made up and became friends. At this time, Ji texted wanting to meet Solji and said, "If you don't come, you'll regret it." Solji ignored her threat and went straight home. When she got home, she really wanted to ask her stepmother about the lawsuit, but she hesitated and didn't ask. The next day, she took advantage of her stepmother being out of the house to rummage through everything, only finding a 500 million won insurance policy and the green envelope she brought home last time. Inside were 3 cards on which was written karma. There is no permanent secret in the world, and she thought why her husband did die. Who sent the letter? What did the sender's words mean? Solji suspected that the reason her stepmother was hiding the lawsuit was to demand compensation from the hospital in the name of her father's daughter. But why did she insist on bringing her from the orphanage to Seoul? After saying all her doubts, Solji realized that her attitude wasn't very good, and besides, she still had to stay here temporarily. So she obediently apologized to her stepmother. The next day at school, the teacher announced the midterm exam schedule. Solji immediately became stressed because she knew the exam questions would definitely come from the workbooks from the outside tutoring classes. But she had just had a fight with Ji, and without her providing the workbooks, she didn't know how she would pass this exam. While worrying about the workbooks, she discovered that her brain-boosting pills were out. Without the pills, she was even less confident about the exam. Therefore, she had to run around to various pharmacies to buy them, but since it was a prescription drug, without a doctor prescription, Solji couldn't buy it. we can see how crazy Korean high school students are about studying. To get high scores on the midterm exam, some chew brain-boosting pills like candy. Some are even more extreme, undergoing surgery to prevent menstruation from affecting their studies. The main character, Seolji, was really in a bind at this moment. Helpless, Seolji had to find a seller online, and unexpectedly, she actually found one, but the seller asked her for a password. Seolji saw that the seller's avatar was a picture of a paper crane, and she remembered a girl in her class who had also given her a paper crane like that. She hurriedly opened the crane, and sure enough, there was a sequence of numbers inside. She sent the numbers, and it matched the password, and then she quickly contacted the seller. The seller told her to go to a nearby locker in an hour to deposit the money and pick up the goods. This girl was only responsible for collecting buyer information. The real seller was someone else. Seolji went to the locker on time to deposit the money. That evening, a person wearing a hoodie secretly broke into the hospital's medicine storage room. That person skateboarded to the transaction point, conveniently exchanging the money for the goods. But unexpectedly, Seolji blocked the person's path. This person didn't try to avoid her, but instead removed the disguise. Surprisingly, the drug seller was J.I. She even thoughtfully said that the type of medicine Seolji was using was out of stock, and she had prepared a stronger one for her. Seolji was confused inside. She chased after J.I. to return the medicine. J.I. sarcastically said that if she didn't take the medicine, Seolji wouldn't be able to do well on the exam. Moreover, Seolji didn't have the workbooks from the tutoring classes, making it even harder to pass the exam. Seolji hesitated. J.I. skateboarded around her, and seeing her dilemma, she made a condition. If Seolji scored higher than her on the exam, she would tell Seolji the purpose of collecting her information. This tactic seemed very effective. Seolji was clearly wavering. J.I. immediately took out the workbook she had prepared and gave it to her. Seolji tremblingly took the book, as if agreeing with J.I., and then went back to the locker to get the medicine. This pill was indeed different from the one she had taken before. As soon as she took it, a surge of power rushed straight to her head. At the same time, her friend Yuri had sold Seolji's essay to the tutoring class, earning 1 million won for her living expenses. This amount was just a drop in the bucket. She decided to get a part-time job at a bar. The interviewer told her that there were many girls her age in this industry, and once they got involved, they couldn't get out, giving her time to think. Before leaving, she happened to see a man searching everywhere for a girl, and she recognized the person in the photo. So the next morning, Yuri deliberately created a chance encounter with J.I.'s father. She said directly that although she wasn't good at studying, she had one strength over her peers. She knew exactly where to make a lot of money. Right after that, she changed to a serious expression and took out her phone from her pocket. "You're looking for Imna, right?" J.I.'s father saw the photo of his eldest daughter, and his expression immediately changed. Yuri muttered to herself, "Everyone thinks your eldest daughter is somewhere studying for the college entrance exam, but it seems that's not the case. Even her sister Jai doesn't know the truth." She started hinting, knowing that he was quick to understand the situation. J.I.'s father understood Yuri's meaning and agreed to sponsor her, but first, she needed to show some corresponding sincerity. The reason Yuri developed this nosy, meddling personality was all learned from her mother. At that time, her mother thought that only by raising her daughter, who loved to act, to become a star could the two of them have a chance to change their lives. However, the child had no talent, and no matter how much she flattered the director, it was useless. From then on, Yuri's personality changed drastically. She started disobeying her mother and loved to show off. She created an image of herself as a rich young lady on social media. To have money to buy designer goods, she gradually became interested in collecting other people's dirty secrets. The photo of Seo Eun-ji trading used uniforms was also taken secretly by her. Back to school. Today, the official exam began. Before the exam, Seolji only took one pill and felt clearer-headed than ever before. When she started doing the exam, Seolji was even more surprised to find that the exam questions completely matched the workbook J.I. had given her. Just by copying the answers she had memorized, Seolji could get a perfect score. She glanced at J.I., who winked at her. Thanks to this, Seolji easily completed the exam. Looking at the scoreboard announcing the results, you can see that Seolji, a girl who transferred from the countryside to the city, won first place in the whole school on her very first exam, making the group of genius rich girls furious. because they spend huge amounts of money on expensive tutoring classes every month, yet they lost to a country girl who had never even heard of tutoring classes. Solji looked at her name next to JIS in a tie for first place, and she wasn't happy at all, because she knew very well that this achievement was due to cheating, thanks to the hacking software that JI gave her, a super strong brain boosting pill, and the workbook from the tutoring class. Both of them achieved perfect scores, tying for first place in school. But before she could celebrate, Solji was surrounded by suspicion. Everyone knew the exam questions came from the tutoring class workbook, and Solji didn't go to tutoring, yet she came in first. Solji could only lower her head and quietly leave the crowd. At this time, an uninvited guest came looking for Solji. It was the person who had sold her the medicine before. He came to inquire about the whereabouts of someone, a senior who was close to Solji. Solji had received a call from the senior, but had blocked the number because she didn't want to have anything to do with people from her past, and she didn't want to be involved with him anymore. Therefore, she lied and said she didn't know anything. Unexpectedly, he pulled out a knife and threatened her, warning her not to lie and not to treat him like a fool. He knew Solji got first place by taking the medicine. He demanded that Solji pay off the debt for the medicine. Finally, he warned that he would be back next week to collect the money. Solji felt exhausted. Before she could recover from that shock, the school delivered another heavy blow. The school announced that the top 20 students would have a health checkup at JIS Family's hospital. This was normally a good benefit, but for Solji, it was like a ticking time bomb, because the health checkup would definitely detect that she had used illegal drugs. Solji rushed to the office, asking the teachers to cancel the health checkup, but was refused. She was told that if she didn't have the checkup, her exam results would be invalidated. Solji was helpless and had to grit her teeth and get on the bus to the hospital. When she got on the bus, J.I. signaled for her to sit with her, but Solji coldly and deliberately sat in the back. At the hospital, the first thing was a urine test. Solji held the sample cup, anxiously pacing back and forth in the bathroom. Suddenly, she met the girl who had given her the paper crane. The girl looked at Solji meaningfully. Solji was flustered and didn't know what to do. Then, J.I. texted her to go to the hospital rooftop, saying she had something that could help her. Without hesitation, Solji ran straight to the rooftop. She realized that she could never escape the control of this friend named Jai. J.I. stood with her back to her on the rooftop. After Solji put down the sample cup, she knelt down in front of J.I. and begged her for help. I was really so stupid, from a uniform, the tutoring center, to the midterm exam. You did everything to make me kneel before you, and yet I didn't know it and fought against you. Whatever you want, I'll do it. Solji said she would convince her stepmother to settle with J.I.'s father, in exchange for J.I. helping her get through this checkup. Unexpectedly, J.I. said that a settlement was something she didn't want at all. Solji begged her. She couldn't let this checkup ruin her path to Seoul National University. J.I. came closer, reached out and pulled Solji to her feet, saying that she had always tried to keep her safe, even now. Then she gave Solji another urine sample cup. She then said words to encourage Solji's spirit, that she got a perfect score not because of her medicine, but because of her own inherent ability. J.I. said that she was very happy that Solji tied with her for first place. The others didn't like it, but she felt very happy, because it was her. At this time, Solji suddenly remembered the previous challenge. According to the agreement, now J.I. had to tell her why she had her records, and what the purpose of that was. Why did she collect all the information about her family? Solji suspected J.I. had bad intentions toward her, but J.I. frankly said that she had seen that information in her father's office. She knew that it was normal for her father to collect information for lawsuits, but the documents about Solji and Solji's stepmother were unusually extensive. J.I. suspected her father had some kind of plot, so she took pictures of everything. Solji was skeptical about this explanation, but J.I. had actually helped her get to the health checkup, and she had also promised to obey her. So she agreed to temporarily maintain this relationship with J.I., and the two returned to hospital and joined the other students in experiencing deep sleep. A few hours later, J.I. woke up first and discovered that Yuri had stolen Solji's locker key and gone out. J.I. intended to follow her to see what was going on, but was stopped by the nurse. J.I. immediately called the girl who folded paper cranes, telling her to follow Yuri tonight and report Yuri's every move to her. The evening was the annual school Foundation Day celebration, and all the actors in the drama came, including the senior who was blackmailing Solji for money. He disguised himself as a high school student and sneaked into the school to find Solji to demand money. Solji and Ji were having a lot of fun at the celebration. Ji took Solji to meet Choi-yun's mother. The two ate grilled meat and drank coke at Choi-yun's mother's stall. Ji-'s father immediately rushed over to scold Ji for eating and drinking carelessly, but Solji argued with him every step of the way. For the first time, Ji saw her father so angry that his face was distorted, and Ji was extremely excited and happy inside. At this time, the girl who folded paper cranes texted to report that Yuri was holding a phone that she didn't know who it belonged to and was looking everywhere for a charger to charge the phone. Ji told her to continue following Yuri to see who the phone in Yuri's hand really belonged to. Yuri took the phone and went into the bathroom. Her classmate Soo was also there, so Yuri used the bait of introducing her to a handsome guy, asking her to find a matching charger. Hearing about a handsome guy, Soo's eyes immediately lit up, and she ran back to classroom building, rummaging through each student's bag. Yuri took the phone and wandered around the school. Next to the interaction tent, she happened to meet Choi-yun, and excitedly pushed Choi-yun into the tent, insisting on introducing her to a 1.80-meter tall athlete. As a result, she accidentally pushed the drug-selling senior into the interaction with Choi-yun. Choi-yun and the senior were separated by a wall, neither of them seeing each other. The sharp-eyed senior saw Choi-yun fidgeting through the small window, and seeing that she was showing signs of having back pain, he guessed that Choi-yun needed a pain relief patch. So he gave Choi-yun the pain relief patch and said if Choi-yun wanted more patches like that, she should ask Solji in the 12th grade. After saying that, the senior left the tent. Just as the senior went out, Yuri also happened to see a matching charging cable under the table of the interaction tent. She immediately took the phone, plugged it in, and walked out of the tent. Choi-yun quickly asked Yuri about the senior, but Yuri said that she didn't know him either. Choi-yun felt that something was wrong, so she took out her phone and called Solji to ask. She called many times, but Solji didn't answer, because at this time, Solji and Ji were playing happily in the ball pit. Accidentally, their eyes met affectionately. Ji slowly moved closer to Solji, but then nothing happened between them. After having fun in the ball pit, Solji also spoke her true feelings, that she still didn't trust her very much. But getting first place with her, she felt very happy, because that person was her Ji. Ji felt really happy after hearing this. Then both of them watched dazzling fireworks together. Inside both of them, they felt unspeakable emotion. In another development, the girl who folded paper cranes was still following Yuri. She saw Yuri going in and out of the interaction tent continuously, but not carrying the phone. Right after that, Yuri received a call and went to the parking lot to meet someone. The person she met was Ji's father. The girl who folded paper cranes quickly hid nearby to film and eavesdrop. It turned out that Ji's father had made a deal with Yuri, that if she stole Solji's phone, he would sponsor her with a large amount of money. Yuri had stolen a phone at the hospital today, but she discovered that the phone Ji's father asked her to steal was not the phone Solji usually used. Yuri opened it and discovered that it was a phone of the test-setting teacher who had died. In other words, what Ji's father wanted Yuri to steal was the deceased teacher's belongings. Although she didn't know the relationship between Solji and the test-setting teacher, Yuri used the excuse that she had stolen the belongings to blackmail Ji's father for an additional fee for her hard work. Ji's father, wanting to get the phone, had to agree. Yuri happily went back to the tent to get the phone. The girl who folded paper cranes immediately sent the video she had filmed to Ji and told her that it was a test-setting teacher's phone and was currently being charged in the interaction tent. Ji watched the video and immediately left Solji to go get the phone. Just as Ji left, Choi-yun came complaining about Solji not answering her phone. She opened her bag and discovered that her father's phone was missing. She hurriedly searched all over the school. Meanwhile, Ji rushed into the tent, got the phone, and hid in the bathroom to check it. Yuri came back and saw that the phone was gone. Just as she discovered Solji was looking for a phone, Yuri and Ji's father also played the role of good people helping Solji. Accidentally, the two of them looked at each other, and Solji felt that something was wrong. She sensed that Yuri and Ji's father were acting strangely. Just then, Soo came with the charging cable, excitedly urging Yuri to introduce her some handsome guys. Yuri annoyedly pushed her aside to look for phone. After entering the password for a while, Ji finally unlocked the phone. At this time, Ji discovered a video that her father had sent to Solji's father. In the video, two people dressed sloppily were her older sister and Solji's father. Ji was completely surprised because her older sister hadn't been home for a long time. Her father said that her sister, because she failed the university entrance exam, was hiding somewhere to study again. Now it seemed that her father had lied. What had her sister gone through that made her disappear? Ji compared the video and found that classroom. She was about to look for clues when she heard a commotion downstairs. It turned out that Soo was unhappy because she was tricked by Yuri, and she was holding a knife, gradually cornering Yuri. Why do you all look down on me? Who lied to you? Who's the slow one? Delusional too? No wonder Jab broke up with you. Hearing this, Soo glanced at Solji. Provoked, Soo used a knife to injure Yuri's hand, and then moved towards Solji. Thinking that her appearance was what made Ji break up with her, Soo stabbed towards Solji. Solji was stabbed in the arm and fell to the ground. Witnessing this scene, Ji's father revealed a smile that was hard to notice. Ji wanted to go downstairs to see what was happening, but unexpectedly at this moment, someone entered. Ji was stunned. The person took off the hood, and Ji discovered that it was her older sister who hadn't been home for a long time.
Imna was just as good as Jay. When they were little, and the two sisters were competing, Imna secretly erased her own correct answers, just because she'd rather get spanked than let her younger sister get hit. Every time she heard her parents fighting, little Imna always prioritized protecting her younger sister. Jay won, even when she heard her parents arguing over who would get custody of her sister, while she was at risk of being the one left behind. To avoid being abandoned, Imna tried her best to be a perfectly well-behaved child, taking care of the broken family. But because of her parents' split, the relationship between the two sisters grew further and further apart. When Imna realized this, she started praying, asking God to let her get a serious illness, so that someone would feel sorry for her. Maybe her prayers were answered, because just a little later, Imna collapsed. She was taken to the hospital for tests, and that's when she found out she had narcolepsy. She thought Ji would be there for her, but Ji was indifferent to her sister's condition, only focused on going to her extra classes. Her dad seemed to care, being attentive and kind, blaming himself for getting frustrated when he saw Imna dozing off while studying, and even promised to support her from behind. But really, he just wanted Imna to get over her illness and try to do well in math. That so-called support from behind was actually terrifying. Every time she was in class, Imna had hallucinations, seeing her dad staring at her. Solji's dad was Imna's homeroom teacher, and he also advised her to take care of her health. But Imna only noticed the Korea University keychain on his phone. She tried to ask for a keychain like that, thinking that just looking at the keychain and taking more medicine would motivate her to study. But Imna started having constant insomnia. In desperation, she made a bad decision. Late at night, she broke into the school's secret room, rummaged through everything to steal the exam paper. Unexpectedly, she was caught by Solji's dad. Right at that moment, her narcolepsy kicked in. When she woke up, the first thing Imna did was beg Solji's dad to keep it a secret. Since it was her first offense, he wasn't planning to press charges. He just asked why Imna did it. Imna then hugged him tightly and cried. During their struggle, he accidentally activated Imna's watch. The hidden camera started recording. And even more unexpectedly, Imna's dad used this video to blackmail the teacher who set the exam. After that, the teacher who set the exam suddenly died mysteriously, and Imna also disappeared without a trace. Going back to the earlier events, Ji accidentally picked up the exam-setting teacher's phone and discovered the sensitive video of her sister with the teacher. Suddenly, Imna appeared and demanded that her sister give her the phone. Her sister refused, and the two sisters struggled, causing the phone to fall down to a lower level. Imna, ignoring the danger, jumped down to find the phone, but she couldn't find it and was spotted by security. To hide her identity, she had to run away. Finally, the phone was found by Jay first in a bush. Ji hid the phone, planning to go back and find her friend, but discovered that the school had been locked down at all the gates and announced that all students should return to their classrooms and wait for instructions. Imna followed a male student who climbed over the wall to get out of school. Ji went back to the scene of the school anniversary celebration and asked her friend what had happened. Her friend said that Soo had attacked Solji, and she had been taken to the hospital by Jae-won's dad. Hearing that, Jae-i's face changed, fearing that her dad would harm Solji, so she immediately climbed over the wall to get out of school and ran straight to the hospital. Meanwhile, the school started checking the belongings of each student. According to Soo's statement, she had taken stimulants that led to her attacking Solji. To cover up the incident, the principal ordered the homeroom teachers to confiscate all drugs and prohibited items. Unhappy with the school's handling of the situation, Choi Yan secretly hid the weapon, intending to report it to the police, but unexpectedly, her mother found out on their way home. The mother scolded her and grabbed the weapon, not allowing her daughter to get involved in this. Because her mother was a lawyer, she understood the law well, knowing that people like Jae-won's dad were very good at manipulating the law. So she couldn't let her daughter get involved. Arriving at the hospital, Jae happened to see her dad stitching up Sol-ji's wound. The girl approached, looked at Sol-ji, and then gently took her hand. The warm feeling from Sol-ji's hand finally confirmed to her that Sol-ji was still alive. Her dad wanted his daughter to stitch up Sol-ji's wound herself, saying that it would be very helpful for her application to medical school later. He recounted his first time practicing stitching on pigskin while in medical school. But because the pigskin was too thick and of uneven quality, it made him very frustrated. It wasn't until he got to stitch on a real human corpse, soft and elastic, that the numb feeling in his hands that night made him so excited he couldn't sleep. But he commented that Sol-ji's skin didn't have enough fat, not a bit of elasticity, as if she was malnourished. I silently listened to her dad's crazy-sounding words, completely unable to guess his thoughts. Because she was worried that her dad would harm Sol-ji, I decided to put on the gloves she had prepared and stitch up Sol-ji's wound herself. At this time, her stepmother rushed to the hospital without being informed, and she was very displeased to see I performing surgery on the patient without permission. Moreover, she was suing I's dad, so the two of them were considered mortal enemies. But it was late, and they couldn't find another hospital to transfer her to, so the stepmother had to agree to let Sol-ji stay in the hospital temporarily. While pushing the hospital bed, she brushed I's hand away and left without a word. After finishing treating Sol-ji's wound, wearily returned home. The girl who sold the drugs called Jae-won, fearing the consequences of selling the drugs to Byung-soo. I blamed her for dealing directly with Byung-soo, leading to the current situation. What's done is done. As long as they don't say anything, no one will know. But the girl who sold the drugs reminded her that Sol-ji also knew about it. I angrily threw the phone down. She had to go and test Sol-ji's attitude. At this time, a video of Byung-soo attacking Sol-ji was posted online by someone, causing a public uproar. There were even rumors that the school's high university acceptance rate was due to students collectively using stimulants. Waking up, Sol-ji also saw this video. At this time, I brought her puppy to the hospital to visit Sol-ji. She ran up and hugged Sol-ji tightly, as if hugging a treasure she had just found again. Actually, I had always thought about the image of her beloved puppy dying. Because she cared so much, she always had to prepare herself mentally to avoid being heartbroken when it actually happened. And recently, she had also started to imagine the image of Sol-ji, the person she cared about most, dying. The two were silent for a moment. Then Sol-ji asked if she had seen her other phone. She pretended to say she hadn't. Sol-ji explained that it was her dad's phone, and she hadn't had a chance to unlock it before it was lost. Then, Sol-ji asked if she knew her dad. She said she knew him, but had never taken his class. And then asked back, what if Sol-ji's dad wasn't a good person? After all, there were rumors that he was having an affair with a student. But if that were the case, shouldn't Sol-ji be relieved? If her dad was a good person, she should feel even more burdened. Just by proving that her dad wasn't as good as she thought, I believed that Sol-ji would feel less psychological pressure. But Sol-ji got angry at these words. Before leaving, she said, "Not everyone lives like you." At this time, the hospital gates were closed. Sol-ji looked for the emergency exit and happened to see Jae-won's dad and a few staff members loading a body-shaped bag into a car. After they left, Sol-ji went back to the hospital. At this time, a senior called Sol-ji, asking if she had seen that other student lately. Sol-ji was about to answer when she saw a bag in her room that looked exactly like the one she had just seen. She approached, and a foot fell out of the bag. Sol-ji was terrified. Behind her, there were footsteps. Right after that, a man suddenly appeared behind her. It was Jae-won's dad. Sol-ji panicked and tried to run away, but the door wouldn't open. Jae-won's dad calmly explained that these were all unclaimed, anonymous corpses. He was in charge of receiving and burying them, and sometimes he also used them for practice. These corpses were already a headache for the community, and burying them individually would cost a lot of tax money. So what Jae's dad was doing was a good deed. He told Sol-ji suggestively, if she wanted to go into the medical field, she couldn't be afraid of blood and organs. Of course, the prerequisite was that she had to be a good girl and pass the university entrance exam. After saying that, he opened the door for Sol-ji to leave the operating room. After arguing with Solji at the hospital, Ji returned home. On the way, she was startled by her sister, who suddenly appeared. Her sister begged her to hand over the exam setting teacher's phone. She planned to use the video to prove that their dad had killed the teacher. Ji was shocked to hear this. She hadn't expected her dad to actually harm the exam setting teacher. Her sister said that she could testify, so she really needed the video on the phone as evidence. Moreover, she had promised the teacher's family that she would give them the truth. Ji agreed to give her sister the phone, but wanted to wait for the right time. Then, she gave her sister a phone to keep in touch. The next day, Ji was discharged from the hospital and went to school, but she didn't know that the police had come to the school to investigate the attack from the previous night. The police called each student in the class one by one for questioning. Ji had just arrived at school when she was stopped by the homeroom teacher and taken to the office. In the office, Byung-soo's family and lawyer were already waiting. They weren't there to apologize to Jae-won, but instead, they were aggressive, forcing Jae-won, who was an orphan, to accept a settlement. Jae had to call her stepmother to the school. Her stepmother stood by Jae-first's side, firmly refusing to settle. Seeing how tough the two of them were, Byung-soo's family then turned around and said that Jae had sold prohibited drugs to their daughter, saying that Jae gave her some special drugs and told her to mix and drink, said her grades will improve. The homeroom teacher also joined in, blaming Jae the first. Jae-won and her stepmother tried their best to deny it, but no one cared. The principal even threatened to expel Jae-won if she didn't admit guilt. At this time, the police came to take Seol-ji in for questioning. Seol-ji thought the police would listen to her explanation, but unexpectedly, the police also suspected Seol-ji of stealing drugs to sell to Byung-soo, because someone reported her for stealing drugs at the hospital on the day of the health checkup. Security camera footage showed her hanging around near the pharmacy. Seol-ji immediately realized that the person who reported her was most likely Jae-won, because it was Jae-won who had told her to go through the pharmacy to get to the rooftop. She was incredibly disappointed. To clear her name, Seol-ji accused Jae-won and Ra, which is the girl who folded paper cranes, of being the real drug dealers. The school quickly received the report from the police, but they didn't dare to take any drastic action. The homeroom teacher called An Ra in to talk, and Ra went back and told Jae about Seol-ji's accusation. However, Jae wasn't worried at all. She thought she could handle everything, but unexpectedly, her dad was one step ahead. Her dad seemed to be planning to sacrifice Seol-ji to settle things. Jae was worried that her dad would expel Seol-ji, ruining her chance to go to university. So she decided to find Seol-ji to talk, but Seol-ji didn't want anything to do with her anymore, even after learning about the betrayal. However, Jae wasn't angry at all, and even praised Seol-ji for doing a good job. At this time, the senior suddenly appeared at the classroom, looking for Seol-ji. Because Seol-ji wasn't answering her phone, he had to come in person. Seol-ji was stared at by everyone as he pulled her out of the classroom. The senior told Seol-ji that he had thought of a way to help her pay off her debt quickly. He heard that the drug dealer in the Seoul area was a high school girl, and suggested that Seol-ji steal her territory. He asked Seol-ji if she had ever bought drugs in the Seoul area. Seol-ji truthfully admitted that she had, but didn't reveal that the sellers were Jae-won and Ra. The senior immediately asked her to place an order to lure the seller out. Seol-ji had to listen to the senior, and forwarded the account to him to contact the seller. The senior told Seol-ji that the seller had set the transaction at locker number 4 at the subway station. Seol-ji received the message and felt uneasy, because she wasn't sure if the person making the delivery was An Ra or Jae-won. After school, she and the senior went to the subway station together. The senior followed behind, planning to catch the seller. At the same time, An Ra confessed to Jae-won first that she had received Seol-ji's order and had reported the police to arrest Seol-ji. She wanted to pin the drug dealing on Seol-ji. Jae was furious when she heard this. She grabbed An Ra's phone and rushed to the subway station. On the way, she came up with a plan. She texted her sister, telling her to go to locker number 4 at the subway station to get the exam setting teacher's phone. Jae saw her sister enter the subway station with her own eyes. Then, she took An Ra's phone and texted the senior, changing the transaction location to locker number 8. At this time, Seol-ji had already arrived at locker number 4. The senior quickly told her to move to locker number 8. As soon as Seol-ji left, the senior saw Jae-won's sister open locker number 4. The sister saw that there was no phone in the locker, and immediately ran out of the subway station. The senior suspected that Jae-won's sister was the seller, and followed her. Seol-ji arrived at locker number 8, and Jae suddenly appeared, pulling her away to run. On the other side, the senior chased Jae-won's sister out of the subway station and saw her being forced into an ambulance by two nurses. While he was feeling confused, he saw the ambulance with Jae-i's dad following behind. Scene change. Ever since he was little, the boy had been considered a weirdo in everyone's eyes. Just because of one family trip, a chance discovery changed his entire life. The security scanner went through the suitcase's shell, capturing the items inside. That magical scene left the boy stunned and speechless. From then on, the boy developed a strong passion for dissection. However, he was too young to be exposed to living bodies, so at every meal, the boy took action on the dishes made from animals. Gradually, the boy became skilled and immersed in the feeling of separating bone and flesh. Later, when he could debone a fish in less than a minute, the boy considered himself a genius. One day when the boy was on a picnic with his family, he suddenly saw a squirrel that had been run over lying on the road. The boy got out of the car and personally buried the squirrel on the side of the road. In the evening, the boy excitedly dug up the squirrel's body. That was the first time the boy had actually touched a living creature. Many years later, the boy became an excellent doctor. Today, while performing surgery, he unexpectedly discovered his young daughter watching, displaying the same talent he had years ago. The father was convinced that his young daughter had inherited his genes, because only a genius can understand a genius. That's right, the boy who was passionate about dissection back then was Jae-won's twisted father. After Jae-I successfully rescued Seol-ji. On the subway, Jae-I confessed that it was In-ra's trap. Seol-ji just realized that she had narrowly escaped danger. She also honestly told Jae-won that she was forced by her senior to buy drugs. Afterward, the two returned to locker number 4. Jae-I saw that the drugs in the locker had disappeared, and she thought her sister had been arrested by the police. Seol-ji was worried that her sister had been wrongly arrested, but Jae-I said that she deliberately lured her sister there to be caught by the police. Because her dad was always looking for her sister, getting caught was a way to avoid him. However, when they arrived at the police station, they discovered that Im-na hadn't been arrested, meaning Im-na had disappeared again. Luckily, Jae-I had installed a tracker on her sister's phone. She opened the tracker and saw that her sister was at home. But when Jae-I ran home, her sister's room was empty. She tried calling her sister, and the phone rang in the room. Jae-I went back into the room, saw the phone but not the person, only to find that the window had been opened at some point. As Jae-I was closing the window, her dad suddenly walked in, startling her. He told Jae-won that it was raining so hard and she didn't call him if she caught a cold. It would affect her studies. Her dad also reminded her to take a hot bath later and turned to leave. After her dad left the room, Jae-I opened the closet, and sure enough, Seol-ji's phone was gone. Jae-I was completely confused, not knowing where her sister had gone. Actually, Jae-I reported her sister to the police because she thought that was better than her falling into her dad's hands. It wasn't until the next day that In-ra found out that Seol-ji hadn't been arrested. To protect herself, she anonymously posted a video online of Jae-I forcing her former deskmate to kneel in the bathroom, while also implying that Jae-I was the school drug lord. The video spread throughout the school, but Jae-I didn't seem to care. At this time, the police came to the school to investigate the drug dealing at the subway station the previous day. They released the surveillance video showing Im-na appearing at locker number 4. The police said that according to the informant's source, the girl in the surveillance video was from this school, and asked the students to identify her and find her. Jae-I quickly stood up and pointed out that the person in the surveillance video was her sister. The whole auditorium buzzed. Jae-I said that she had witnessed Im-na stealing drugs from her dad's hospital many times. On the day of the school festival, Im-na had sold drugs to Beom-soo at school, but after the festival, she disappeared. Jae-I begged the police to quickly find her sister and bring her to justice. The police followed Jae-won's statement to conduct an investigation, and the first person they investigated was, of course, Jae-i's dad, who was also Im-na's dad. Seol-ji was very curious why Jae-I had blamed her sister, Im-na. Jae-I said that doing so could not only clear Seol-ji's name, but also use the police force to find her sister. She pulled Seol-ji to the surveillance room, trying to find clues about her sister from the security cameras to provide to the police. Soon, Jae-I saw the surveillance video of her sister. However, what surprised her was that her sister had met Choi-yeon that night. Jae-won and Seol-ji immediately went to find Choi-yeon to ask about the content of the conversation. The two followed Choi-yeon, seeing her get on bus number 300. Seol-ji suddenly remembered that the last time she parted ways with Choi-yeon, she was very familiar with the route of bus number 300, and this bus route passed by her stepmother's house. Sure enough, Seol-ji found Choi-yeon panicking below the apartment building. From Choi Yan's blackened hands, she guessed that the black threatening letter was sent by her. However, Seol-ji didn't say anything, and at this moment, Jae-I also arrived. The two blocked Choi Yan and directly stated their purpose. Choi Yan remained silent. Actually, that night, Im-na had asked her if she knew Sol-shi, the daughter of the exam-setting teacher. Choi Yan, being smart, immediately realized that Im-na was involved in the medical lawsuit with the exam-setting teacher. Im-na didn't deny it, but quietly told Choi Yan many details, and finally asked Choi Yan to keep their conversation that night a secret. Therefore, Choi Yan didn't reveal any information to Jae-won. Jae-I couldn't do anything to Choi Yan either. At this time, Jae the first unexpectedly received a mysterious call. The person on the other end used a voice that had been altered, telling Jae-I that they knew Im-na's whereabouts. If Jae-I brought the drugs they needed to a bar, they would tell Jae-I where Im-na was. Knowing this, Sol-ji and Choi Yan also wanted to go along. At that point, they could join forces to catch this mysterious person. Jae-I thought this was a great idea, so the three of them went to Jae-won's house to prepare thoroughly, and then went to the bar. Blending in, Jae-I followed the instructions and placed the drugs in the women's restroom. Sol-ji hid in the restroom, waiting for the person who came to get the drugs to appear. In case the other person had accomplices, Jae-I was in charge of observing from the second floor. Choi Yan was a little curious. At the bar, she ordered a bottle of alcohol but didn't know how to open it. A woman next to her grabbed the bottle and helped her open it. Sol-ji was in the restroom, keeping watch over where Jae-I had placed the drugs. A few minutes later, a man wearing a red hat entered the restroom. Sol-ji stared at him. The man quickly walked out, looked at Sol-ji, gave a sinister smile, and left. After the man left, Sol-ji told Choi Yan to go into the restroom and hide, while she and Jae-I would follow the man in the red hat. In the dim light, Sol-ji couldn't see the man's face clearly. Sol-ji hurried to follow, but there were too many people outside, and she got lost. Choi Yan ran to the restroom to help, looking for the suspect according to the description. Jae-I found the man's trail again and hurried to follow. The man went up to the second floor. At this time, someone else entered that restroom. Choi Yan grabbed the hose next to her. That person was opening the toilet lid. Choi Yan glanced over and then sprayed water at that person. When Sol-ji reached the second floor, she discovered that Jae-I had been caught by the senior. And in the restroom, Choi Yan also caught the person who came to get the drugs. But to her surprise, that person was Yi-ri. After Yi-ri was caught red-handed at the bar. The reason she came here was because her family went bankrupt. Because of her pride, she still continued to pretend to be rich at school. She herself was currently homeless, having to sleep in public bathrooms. Only ordinary people knew about this. Sol-ji understood Yi-ri's situation and even went to comfort her, making Yi-ri feel guilty towards her. I was concerned about whether her dad had instigated this. Actually, ever since the attempt to steal Sol-ji's phone failed, the deal between Yi-ri and Jae-won's dad had ended. In addition, on the day of the school festival, Byung-soo yelled that she had met Jae-won, making her unreasonably suspect that Jae-fir's dad had found her. As a result, during the day, Jae-I only needed to glare at Byung-soo to make her scared. From this, it could be deduced that Jae-fir's dad still hadn't found her sister, so he made up the lie about knowing where Im-na was, simply wanting to scam some money. At this time, Sol-ji was suspicious about why Jae-fir's dad was looking for her dad's phone. What secrets were hidden inside? But Jae-I chose to remain silent. The senior happened to be hanging out at the bar, and he recognized Jae-won. When he learned that the four kids were looking for Im-na, he revealed a shocking piece of information. It turned out that on the night of the school festival, he had been bumped into by Im-na. At first, he thought it was a boy, but when he left, he found the other person's fake ID. That's when he realized that So-jin not only knew Im-na, but also sold her a fake ID. Also, the senior told Sol-ji privately that in the afternoon, he saw Im-na being taken away in an ambulance, and the situation at the time looked a lot like a kidnapping. Unexpectedly, Jae-I suddenly received bad news. Im-na's body had been found by the police. The group went to the hospital run by Jae-won's dad. At this time, Jae-won's dad refused to let his daughter have an autopsy performed because he had discovered Im-na's farewell note. That's right, the sister that the four kids had been struggling to find was dead. Strangely, the body was deformed to the point of being unrecognizable. It didn't look like she took her own life. The doctor's conclusion was that she had fallen from a high mountain, and her head had hit a rock. There was one detail here. Sol-ji saw that Im-na's toenails were painted yellow. The next morning at school, Sol-ji was constantly in a state of unease, thinking over and over How could there be such a coincidence in the world? So Jin's toenails were also painted yellow. The students were buzzing. Was Imna's death a self-destruction or a murder? And some even suspected that Ji was the one who killed her sister. Solji got angry when she heard this. She directly threw balls repeatedly at them. Right at this moment, Ra came over and whispered a secret to her. Her dad's phone was still in Jaewon's possession. On the other side, due to the recent series of incidents at the school, in order to ensure the university acceptance rate, plus the fact that the top students in the school, Solji and Jaewon, were involved in the case, the homeroom teacher decided to support Choi Yan. But the prerequisite was that nothing could happen. Choi Yan didn't need to think twice and agreed. She went to the camera room, saw that it was deserted, and anxiously opened the video from 2 years ago. At that time, it was one day before the exam, and she sneaked into the classroom, then sat in Jaewon's seat and started to pleasure herself. After all, she was always second best. She could only do this. Suddenly, there was a light shining in from outside. Choi Yan was scared and quickly lay down. Luckily, the person who came in didn't notice her. She got up and hurried to hide, but accidentally saw Na and the exam setting teacher in the room. Choi Yan was terrified and covered her mouth, not daring to make any sound, but out of curiosity. She still peeked through the crack in the door. This scene was clearly recorded by the camera, so she wanted to delete this part. Coincidentally, this action of hers was caught by Yi Ri, making Choi Yan's heart skip a beat. At the same time, Ji was running for her life in the forest. Then she was pulled back by someone's hand. Out of self-defense, Ji violently attacked the other person, until she realized that it was her sister. She also woke up from the nightmare, startled. At this time, Solji also came to her house. Ji finally told Solji the truth. Now Solji believed that her dad was, as rumored, a teacher who had an inappropriate relationship with a student. Solji said she had just heard from Yi Ri that Ji had her dad's phone. Solji was suspicious about how Ji could have cracked the passcode, as she herself had tried everything and couldn't unlock it. Ji said that the passcode was the date Solji was lost. Solji looked helpless when she heard this. Ji explained that the phone had been lost. Solji angrily started rummaging through things. Unexpectedly, Ji suddenly hugged her from behind. All along, she had always thought that her sister might kill her, but in the dream last night, she herself had attacked her sister. And in the dream, seeing her sister dead, she could be strangely calm. Previously, Ji really hoped her sister would be arrested by the police. That way, everyone would have a chance to live. Solji could completely understand that Ji did all of this to save her. But faced with the sudden death of her sister, Ji was still incredibly sad. Solji listened and hugged Ji tightly. She also apologized for messing up the room. On the other hand, although Yi Ri had deleted Choi Yan's surveillance video from that night, she was surprised. She clearly knew about the relationship between Solji and Solji's dad for a long time, but she could hold back and not say anything. At the same time, Solji suddenly remembered the day she was bullied. Sister Sojin suggested getting a tattoo over the wound to cover it up, because she also had a burn scar on her leg, exactly the same as the wound on Imna's body. At this time, Solji's mind was very confused, suspecting that Imna wasn't actually dead. She tried to find useful clues on Sojin's social media account, and sure enough, she found a drug rehab center, and she was told by Sojin's roommate that, after her condition improved, she had moved to a motel called Magnolia. On the other side, Yi Ri and Choi Yan, following the clue provided by Byung-soo, found a piece of paper under the nameplate in the lab. The content on it was a key and the room number 209. That night, Solji went to the motel. She wanted to find room 208, but the owner told her that the tenant of room 208 had passed away a month ago. But strangely, the rent and the debts to the surrounding businesses were all paid off by someone who looked like a thug. Solji was about to leave when she bumped into Yi Ri and Choi Yan, who had come to investigate. Just like that, the three kids opened room 209 next to room 208. As soon as they entered the room, they discovered that the walls were covered with solutions to difficult math problems, like a perfect masterpiece of a madman. There was also a locked diary on the desk.